Well, let's just begin just by orienting everyone as to who it is you're looking at up here. I'm Gloria Jackson. I have been doing and working and teaching and learning the healing arts since 1980. Just after which time I left my conventional training. I was being trained in psychiatry and general medicine. And I was really looking for the mind-body connection at that time, and I was a little premature, I think, in terms of years. Really, that didn't come along until a lot later. We were still discussing whether holistic should be with a W or an H at that time. I know a few of you will understand what I'm talking about. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what's going on around us, what's going on inside of us based on what's happening in our environment. So let's just begin by asking a question. Do we think we are toxic? I see a few heads going, yeah, I think the answer most likely is yes, based on what we've done to minimize some of that toxicity. So let's take a look at our beautiful state of Virginia to begin. Let's just look at our toxic Virginia as of the year of 2012. The Department of Environmental Quality, which is what that DEQ means, reports, and we're going to go through a few of the areas that are dumping on us here. Fort AP Hill, 29,763 pounds of nitroglycerin they've dumped. JCI Jones Chemicals, 312 pounds of chlorine they've dumped. Quantico is a big dumper here, 59,274 pounds of lead and lead components. Now we'll talk a little bit about more of what that means. 197,857 pounds of solvents and aromatic compounds. Birchwood, 5,043 pounds of 11 different toxic chemicals, including ammonia, copper, zinc, and hydrochloric acid. Let's move on. 2012, we're still going. Masco Cabinetry, 31,873 pounds of toluene and xylene, if anyone's familiar with those compounds, and that went into the air. Row Concrete, 4,801 pounds of nitrates, also into the air. Carry-On Trailer Corporation, 14,172 pounds of chemicals in the air, which included ether, benzene, manganese, and nickel. Let's move up a year, 2013. What do we have? Toxic emissions increased by 10% in 2013. Now, what you're going to notice is, at least in my opinion, we're seeing a little more than just 10%. If you noticed in the previous slides, we saw pounds. Now we're seeing millions of pounds. So let's go to 20.7 million pounds into the air, 11.7 million pounds into the water, 3.7 million pounds into landfills. Now the pollutants that have been dumped included hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, ammonia, arsenic, and copper, just to name a few. So let's continue. The gentleman who is the director of the Sierra Club, and they're like the environmentally responsible organization that we have here nationwide, Glenn Bessa, I believe his name is pronounced, he says, just because the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality says that these toxic emissions are legal does not mean that they are not harmful. Now, one thing that we're consistently hearing, whenever anyone spills anything into the environment, what's the first thing that we hear subsequently? It's okay, it's not going to harm any human beings. Well, maybe that one thing may not, but we're really looking at accumulation. That is the biggest thing that we must be aware of. So let's look at the air. Chemtrails. Does anybody know what they are? They are vaporized toxins sprayed into the air either by plane or helicopter. Isn't that lovely? So that when we go outside and we just kind of look up in the air, many times we see stripes behind the planes in the air. Now I want you to know that there are two different stripes going on up there. There are contrails, which are from the commercial airlines. They're vapors that they leave behind. The difference between a contrail and a chemtrail, however, if we watch the contrail, we'll notice that, excuse me, as the plane goes overhead, we'll see it disappear behind the plane. The chemtrail, on the other hand, is leaving things behind. So what we see is the line goes up and suddenly it begins to expand in the air. Now we see bigger lines in the air. Those are chemtrails. So why do we even care about chemtrails? Let me tell you why. What are they composed of? That's a biggie. Aluminum, barium, lead. So we've got neurotoxins, we've got different kinds of toxins, endocrine disruptors, arsenic, chromium, cadmium, selenium, mercury, and silver. Now, all of us know, and even if we are not extremely well read on environmental toxins, each of us know that it just takes just a bit of mercury to be toxic to our bodies, and yet it's being dropped on our head on a regular basis. What effects do they have on us? Now, these I can say in the media, we see these as potential effects that they can have on us. But again, I want to remind all of us that these things accumulate in our bodies. Whatever the body doesn't recognize, it's difficult for it to remove. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because the body is an organic being, and thereby it works with the things that come at it and that it needs to break down and distribute within. But if it doesn't understand what it is it going to do? It's going to take it and stuff it somewhere so that it doesn't really have to pay attention to that thing. Well, as that thing continues to be stuffed here and there and stored here and there, eventually they're going to accumulate. And we're going to eventually be able to feel some things happening in our bodies. So what kind of effects do they have on us? Neurological damage. Now, that can start at the level of the brain. We're looking at central nervous system damage whenever we're talking about neurological damage. Heart damage. Eyesight issues. And I know as we sit there, everybody's kind of looking a little freaked out. It's okay. We're going to get to a part where we'll know how to clean these things up out of our bodies, because they do happen to each and every one of us that live and breathe in a toxic world. Reproductive failures. We hear all the time about ladies talking about how difficult it may be for them to conceive, and even guys talking about their difficulty with their sperm counts changing and going down. Immune system damage. This is a big one. We hear a lot these days about autoimmune illness. Well, if our body, let me just give you an example. If our body is technically painted blue on the outside because of the things that are coming onto our skin just from walking and breathing in it, and say, for instance, yellow on the inside, the body is not going to be able to recognize itself now, is it? Because it wasn't always blue on the outside and yellow on the inside. They were different colors out and in. So once we get to that point where we've been painted so sufficiently, the body stops recognizing itself and then begins to consume itself. Gastrointestinal disorders, kidney damage. Let me give you a personal example of this. One day, now I prize myself on taking really good care of myself over the years. I'm 63 years old, and I have been focusing on my health and well-being for a number of years. I've been in Virginia now for a little short of 4 years. I think it was maybe about after a year or so that I was here. I awoke with a swollen face. This was the first time in my life that anything like this ever happened. My face was puffy and big and swollen. So, of course, because of my background, I had a pretty good idea as to what was going on there. And I knew that I was having some kind of acute kidney insufficiency or failure, just based on the fluid that had backed up into my face. Well, what did I do about that? I immediately ran downstairs and did my own cheek scan on myself to see what have I picked up. And waking up with something just phenomenally going on in your face, where you're going to see it first off, is alarming. And so I was truly alarmed by knowing that my body, a healthy body, had been overcome by something at the point of the kidneys. Thank goodness we have 2 of those, 2 very powerful organs that do a lot of detoxing for us in the day. So I immediately got on it. I adjusted some of my nutrients. I went to see a few of my colleagues who are in the audience today, and we all took a look at it and looked at some blood tests and made some determinations, and I went swiftly about doing what I could do to turn that situation around. Not long after that, I awoke again. It's almost like I don't want to go to sleep sometimes because I'm not sure what I'm going to wake up with in the morning. So I woke up another day, and my left leg was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move it at all. And that's all. I mean, it just wouldn't move. Did I have feeling? Yes. Was everything else in order? Yes. Could I move it? No, highly unusual. So of course, some of my colleagues were thinking, oh, she might have had a stroke. No, I really didn't. There was not a thing wrong with my cognition. And a lot of other things that we would look for in that regard were not present. But something had happened. Now, over our home at that time, there was a big piece of equipment that would go over our house and literally shake the house. But it would only come between the hours of maybe 2 and 5 in the morning. So whenever I would hear it, I would jump up out of my bed and I would run to the window to see if I could spot whatever that was out there. Well, I've yet to spot it. I still haven't seen what it was. But my sense is that it was something spraying something into the air. And sure enough, it had come through my vents and affected me in a way that I had a paralysis that I had never, ever had before. And lastly, another thing, one last thing, I hope it happens in threes, and that's it. So my third thing was, I awoke another morning, and now I had pain and swelling in almost every joint of my body overnight, and lumps showing up under my skin. I definitely was impressed by that and immediately went down and started looking at what do I need to do to start turning this thing around. I subsequently went to a few of my other colleagues. We did some lab tests, and I was actually diagnosed with an autoimmune illness called rheumatoid arthritis. Was I going to keep that? No, I'm not going to keep it. And I've thus started I'm way down the road on that one now, turning that around, and soon we're going to go back and do some blood tests and see how something that is seen by the conventional world not being able to be turned around, we're going to turn it around. So hormonal problems, liver damage, and more. And I put that and more there because everybody is different. We're different. We're raised in different environments. Our DNA is different. Our cultures are different. We eat different foods. We do different activities. Our bodies metabolize at different rates. So yes, we are physiologically and otherwise different. So let's look at one specific thing that's happening in this environment here in Virginia. And that is, there's a lot of spraying going on because there's a lot of growing going on. We're working nationwide to try and minimize some of the assaults that we're getting in our environment, but one major one is Roundup, and a lot of you all are familiar with it. In fact, some of you may even have bottles or cans of it out in your garage and you're getting ready to use it. Well, let me introduce you to some of the things that this seemingly innocuous chemical will actually do for us. You see there a whole list of things that this particular chemical has been linked to. We see, start at the top, ADHD, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, Alzheimer's, something that many of us are really looking to see how we can avoid. We've seen it in some of our friends and families. We've seen the progression. We definitely want to nip that one in the bud. Birth defects. We've also heard about many of these and seen evidence. Autism, increasing in its rate year by year, and we know this. It's gone phenomenally high over the last 5-10 years. Brain cancer, cancers of other varieties, breasts, prostate. Celiac disease. Now we hear a lot about a lot of different gastrointestinal confusions that people are having, changes in their bowel habits. A lot of them are developing, quote, what we call leaky gut syndrome. And leaky gut is actually up there. All right, chronic kidney disease, not only acute but chronic kidney disease, colitis, depression, diabetes, heart disease. You can read the list, it's extensive. And each of these things have been linked to glyphosate, Roundup. So it kind of encourages us to not only stop using this ourselves, if indeed we are, but look at our neighbors and our friends and our family members that might just unknowingly go and buy that stuff because it really is being highly promoted. There's quite the marketing edge behind it right now. So we're going to encourage them to use that less, if at all. Let's look at food. This one, we're calling this the dirty dozen. Why? Because these are the foods most likely to contain the highest amounts of pesticides. And glyphosate was one of those major pesticides. So we see that the apples are at the top of the list there. And now we know that if we use organic foods that we're going to be a lot less likely to get these. But what I also want to introduce you to is the fact that some of the organic farms may have non-organic farms somewhere near them. If they're spraying things in the air, so far our technology has not equipped us with automatic walls that come up between and go from the floor to the sky that come up and stop the movement of the air from point to point. So we're actually having some of the difficulties that we experience with the things that the farms, the non-organic farms are spraying, being picked up in the air and moved right over to the organic farms. So we're seeing some of the sprinklings of the different toxins show up in our organic foods as well. Now, are they there in the same amount? No, thank goodness they're not, and so we can still look at continuing to buy organic foods knowing it's going to lessen our toxic load. But are they there? Yes, they are. And so many things are actually being polluted unknowingly, but most definitely. So we've got apples at the top of the list, celery, strawberries, many of us love those big ripe strawberries, peaches, spinach, many of us use spinach in our green drinks in the morning, nectarines, grapes are biggies, our children love eating the grapes. You know, that's one of our little fruit treats that they love popping in their mouth. Well, now we may want to really look at popping those having them pop those grapes in their mouth. All right, bell peppers, potatoes, and we're primarily looking at white potatoes here, blueberries, lettuce, kale, collard greens. Those are the dirty dozen, so those are the top 12 dirtiest of the foods that we may want to consume. Here's the clean 15, so these are the ones that are less likely to have higher toxic loads, and they are avocados, thank goodness, I love those, sweet corn, pineapple, cabbage, sweet peas, frozen. You notice they put frozen and not even the fresh ones, frozen. Onions, asparagus, mangoes, papayas, kiwi, eggplant, grapefruit, cantaloupe, cauliflower, sweet potatoes. So yes, we still do have good things that we can eat, and these are among the top ones that we want to make sure are in our diet somewhere, in our children's lunch baskets. Now this one, let's talk about another category of food, genetically modified organisms, GMOs. We've heard a lot about this. One thing that we, the nation, are requesting that be done with the different food manufacturers is that they list the GMOs that they're actually putting in our foods. More often than not, they are not willing to do that. They don't want to tell us the fact that they're putting things that are grown in labs into our foods. Well, we would like to know that because we know that GMOs are also linked to, quote, creating lumps in the body. And I spoke to you not long ago about the lumps that showed up in my body. So I knew that I had somehow gotten hold of, even though I'm very careful, some GMOs or definitely some environmental toxins that definitely changed my life. But I'd like to point out what's written under each one of those, if you all can read that. Underneath tomatoes, tomatoes have been genetically modified, but they are not being grown commercially at this time. Some of the things that are said under some of these things are not as current as we know right now. They are being distributed out into the public, and the same as the salmon. This one also says that they are going to do this, they're going to make fish in the lab and then subsequently hand them over to the farm-raised people and let them raise the GMO salmon. They are being distributed to us already. Wheat is another thing that's up there, and it's being said that wheat has not been released into our nation's diet, but it has been released into our nation's diet. So again, some of the things that are being said, some of the little underlying notes there aren't as current as we know today. So some of these things are definitely out and about and in our diet. And thereby we truly do want to know what's GMO, what's real and what's GMO. I personally would prefer to eat things that are designed by the creator versus designed in a lab. So what do we have? Just a little synopsis. We have external sources of pollutants. We have the water, we have the air, we have our food, and we certainly have our soil. Now, we haven't even looked at our home environment and our work environment. There are also all kinds of pollutants there as well. EMFs among them, and it's listed there. Carpet off gases coming out of that. But we've gone over mostly the things in our food, but there are other sources as well. Some of you know that you've worked in old buildings for years. We don't know what's underneath those ceiling tiles. We have no idea. We don't know how much mold is in our environment, but we do sometimes experience some kind of symptom when we go to certain places. We'll know that suddenly we have watery, itchy eyes, or suddenly we're feeling a bit nauseous for some unknown reason. Something is happening in that environment that we may not be just completely consciously aware of, but we know it's something. So what are some of the internal consequences there? We see them over on the side. What do some of these things produce inside? They create imbalances. That's what we like to call them, because many of us are not really looking to give it a diagnosis as much as we are wanting to understand that there is something that is a little out of kilter. Something is, quote, just not right. And that's enough. That's enough of a reason to pursue what shall I do next. We see depletions, stress. Stress manifests itself as many different ways. One of the main things we're dealing with when we're dealing with stress is stress hormone. That's almost like liquid lava flowing through the body. Inflammation that subsequently happens. And if we allow inflammatory changes to just hang around for too long, they will actually have necrotic changes, so they will eventually turn into more cancerous changes that we will absolutely have to pay a lot more attention to. So you see the list there: corrosion, irritation, toxicity, confusion. Now we're up in the central nervous system again. Many of us definitely recognize that one, or just a little cloudiness in our memory and ability to be sharp and on task. So what happens inside? The toxins actually accumulate. Then they're reabsorbed from our circulation, and then they're stored. And we talked about that a little bit when I spoke of the fact that we could be painted differently on the outside from the environmental toxins and differently on the inside based on those that we have consumed. The major elimination channels are going to be definitely impacted. Lymphatics. Thank goodness we have a garbage removal system inside, much of which is the lymphatic system. It will become clogged and overworked. And the points that Ren introduced us this morning, the tapping that we can do just to move that lymph and help it be dumped so that we can make room for more things. The body is constantly busy trying to correct itself, so we thank it for that. And we will be in a much better position, much more beneficial position, to be able to provide it with some help, however we do that, whether it's through our exercise, our energetic movements, or it's through our diet, or it's through just the way that we conquer life, just the way that we proceed and walk through life with a positive attitude, knowing that whatever comes at us is coming at us for a reason, and that we are well equipped in this moment to handle whatever that is. We're being called to the front, if you will, to be able to do something for ourselves. Circulation. Intestines. When we look at circulation, let me just go back to that. Many times when we think of circulation, we think of blood circulating. People think, oh, circulation, blood, and they think of their heart. Well, there are many, many things that circulate in the body, not just blood. We've got fluids that circulate, air circulates, energy circulates, a lot of things circulate. The liver, primary organ, big organ, thank goodness, resilient organ, but everything that goes in our mouth goes through our liver. So we want to definitely take very good care of that organ and make sure that it's clear. Kidneys, thank goodness we have 2 of them, because we have plenty things that are being moved from our body as we speak. The skin, we heard the estheticians, our master estheticians come and talk about the skin being the largest elimination organ. And certainly whatever's going on in the inside is going to be reflected through the skin. We like to look at, those of us trained in traditional Chinese medicine, we know that the liver is reflected through the skin. So anytime we see bumps and lumps showing up there, discolorations, anything that is other than, quote, normal, end quote, we know that one thing that we want to do is take a look at that liver health. And is it a little too congested? Do we need to put some things through it to clean it out, thus have it reflected in our skin? What systems are impacted? Just by the previous list and the things that are thrown out of balance, many systems are impacted. Almost every system would be, because the body is being impacted, thereby the systems within are being impacted. And so we see everything there from pH all the way through central nervous system, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, urogenital, respiratory, etc. Now it comes down to the big question. How do we feel? How do we feel? Each of us. Do we feel like we felt a month ago? Do we feel as good as we might have felt a year ago? Or are we beginning to notice a few achy breakies in there somewhere? Are we beginning to notice a few changes in our energy? We're beginning to notice some changes maybe in our sleep pattern. It's a little more difficult to get to sleep. Maybe we can't stay asleep the entire night. We wake up. Now it's difficult to go back to sleep. Maybe the amount of urinating that we need to do in the night has increased. Maybe we used to not get up at all. Now we're getting up 3-4 times, some of us. How much water are we drinking? Are we hydrated? Are we not hydrated? A lot of questions we can ask. So how are we feeling? What's the first thing that a lot of us notice when we know that something's a little out of kilter with our bodies? Energy. Is that accurate? Do we notice that? One of the first things we're going to notice, even when we wake up in the morning, open our eyes, what are we noticing? How do I feel? That's the question that goes across our heads, many of us. Pops right in there. How do I feel? I know now, my question is, how am I looking today? Do I have a swollen face? Can I move my leg? Exactly what's going on today? So it's been, excuse me, it's been one curiosity after another waking up. But the energy is definitely one thing that we notice immediately upon awakening. Allergies. Some people are actually getting more and more allergic responses. What's that saying? It's actually saying that our immune system is getting more and more overworked. That's what that's saying. Now, it could be allergies, head, eyes, ears, nose, and throat, upper respiratory tract, something like that, or it could be food allergy. Either way we go, it all relates back to the immune system, and that the immune system is overworked. Why? Because it's trying to protect us. From minute to minute, it's trying to move things out of the body that it knows it sees in excess. All right. Or it's trying to tuck away those things that it doesn't recognize. That's even more work that it's doing too. Anxiety. Sometimes we have psychological manifestations of things when we're not feeling as balanced and as even and as healthy. And we know that there's something tapping our well-being. We feel a little anxious inside. I believe that's part of our intuition, letting us know that something is just a little out. Are we listening to ourselves, or are we ignoring ourselves and wanting just to not look at that right now because we may not have time, or we don't have the interest in looking at that in this moment? I always encourage us to listen to our bodies. We really do know, more than anyone else, what's going on inside of it. And yet we'll run out and we'll seek other people to actually tell us what they think is going on inside of us, when indeed we have a pretty good idea of ourselves. One of the things that will actually benefit us is to learn how to effectively communicate how we feel. Many of us aren't into that, but I encourage us to get into that. There's that sleep. We talked about that. Weight. This is a big one. A lot of people recognize that their weight changes, more often going up than down. They know that they're eating like a little bird, and yet they continue to gain weight. So something's going on there. There's some congestion happening there. Something is in the way of some metabolic process that would otherwise keep your weight at a place where you were preferring it. Flexibility, things getting into the joints. Achy breakies, can I move those joints like I moved them a week ago? Irritability, here we go again. Yes, we know that we can get irritable. How many people are irritable when things just aren't right in their bodies? Raise your hand. Short-tempered. That will definitely give us a definite sign. Mood swings, there's another one. We'll go from depressed to manic. It's been called by many names. It actually has a diagnosis in that arena. And yet, there are many things that we can do about those. Headache, degradation. What choices do we have? We see two sides of the fence there. We have primary care, and I always recommend that each of us have a primary care person that can help us take care of ourselves. But we don't stop there. We look into the natural realm of things as well. So we kind of have different kinds of providers around us because different kinds of providers do different things. And it takes a village, really, to be able to assist us in getting back on our feet sometimes. It's just not one road, it's many roads. Emergency rooms, hopefully we won't have to go to those. Instead of doing emergency, we want to make it more routine on the other side. Take care of ourselves routinely. Then we'll find ourselves in emergency situations far less. Tests. We do tests on both sides. We do tests in the conventional world. We do tests in the holistic world, the healing arts world. Radiology. One particular realm where we can find out a lot of things. We can take a lot of looks and see a lot of pictures. And then we see the non-radioactive way to be able to do that as well. Medications. We can get meds from some of our primary care folks. And at times, many times, we need those meds. Don't be hesitant to take those meds. Take them when you need them. And just know that on the other side of that, if they've left anything behind, we can clean it up. Not a problem. So there's where those foods and those nutrients come in. After we've dealt with whatever we've dealt with, after we've had a pneumonia and we took some antibiotic and we cleared it up. Now, we may want to take a look at that liver and see if the liver still is clear now as it was prior to that. Invasive technologies versus the healing arts. And that's what we're here to really talk about a little more, are the healing arts, the natural ways to go about these things. My thing is nutrition. I do medical nutrition. So in addition to taking a look at the dietary aspects of nutrition, but we have folks who do that far more succinctly than I do, I am one that looks at organ function and system function, which is why I call it medical nutrition. Herbs, we have tonics, we have tinctures, we have energy medicine, some of which we've seen today. And we want to pay attention to energy medicine. Why? Because we are energy on two legs. And if our energy is not moving, guess what? If it becomes stagnant, that's when we begin to feel more of the achy breakies. Or our minds and our memories are not as sharp and as focused as they would otherwise be. We like body work. There are a number of different body workers. And body work is not just massage. There are different aspects of body work, polarity therapies, shiatsu. There are different aspects of body therapies. Water, steam, sauna, thank goodness we can warm that water up and have it be medicinal for us, which is fabulous. Not only can we drink it and have it taste good, but we can sit in a steam room and have it draw things out of our bodies. Meditation over there you see, and just appreciating nature in itself, in that we are of nature. So just going out and seeing the beauty around us facilitates our immune system, if you will, because it facilitates our mood. Whenever it helps our mood, it definitely speaks to our immune system. Exercise, we must exercise, even if we're just more aggressively walking from our car to the door at Costco. We can do that. We can extend our arms and extend our legs a little more so, and just move outside of that normal range of movement and get a little more exercise. And then there's that expression. It's important that we learn how to express ourselves. Whenever we do go to anyone, it's important. We rely on each of you to tell us what is going on. And then we put it in some kind of thing. The conventional people call it a chief complaint. You know, what does the person come in to see you about? And how succinctly are we able to describe how we're feeling to the other person? If we're not practiced on describing how we're feeling, I encourage each of us to practice, pay more attention to ourselves. So we do cleansings and we do detoxes, and that's with the point of clearing out the organs. We use nutrients, we use water. Water is essential. We have to hydrate ourselves to be able to move things around in the body. I would hate for you to be taking expensive nutrients and just creating expensive urine if you're not processing all the nutrients that you're putting in your mouth. So we want you to hydrate yourself, but know what you're hydrating yourself with. Know the quality of the water that you're drinking. What does it have in it? Do you feel good when you hold that water in your hand? Does it speak to you? Do you feel your heart begin to pound? You know, do you feel your pulse? Or does it get cold as a fish in your hand? If it's cold, that's letting you know something. Let's look at some detoxing foods. We can quickly just see what those are. And we start with the seaweed, sea vegetables. Yes, salt. That is good in its proper proportions. But you see some of the vegetables that we've already seen that are our top 15 clean foods, some of which show up right there. And actually some of the dirty ones show up there too. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the dirty ones are more organic. Energy medicine is what Chi-Scan is. And what it is, it's a non-invasive way of taking a look at the body. So you see a picture of the computer that's used there. What it has the capability of doing is reading the acupuncture meridians. Whenever we read those meridians, what we're really reading are the organs and the systems that are at the other end of those meridians. And so this is a non-invasive way for us to really see in a moment how we're doing and how those organs are doing. See all that red on the screen right there? That was a 2-year-old that I saw years ago. And he was from Egypt, and his mom and dad brought him to the United States because he was showing increasing signs of autistic behavior, and they were concerned about him. When we started, he looked like this, and I'm just going to quickly go through these slides. You see that we're seeing a little more green and just a few other long lines there which show levels of imbalance. And finally, when we got to the end of working with this young man, we had him looking very green, and he was singing to his mother, and he was looking at her and touching her face and things like that. And mom was very pleased because her baby had gotten more distant. So she swooped her baby up after all that and took him back to Egypt. And they lived happily ever after. So this next one is a 53-year-old white female diagnosed with fibromyalgia. When we initially started, the first screen, second screen, and third screen are her. So we see just a few areas of green that suggest within normal limits. Otherwise, that red is showing us that the body is stressed, and thereby we need to do something about it. So we did, and there we see a little more green coming in. And this is all nutritional adjustments and nutritional protocols, all natural stuff. So what do we want? And I'm going to just sum this up real quick. All of us want to be aware, read, talk to your friends, talk to your educated colleagues, talk to them, and know what's going on in the world around you. Eat healthy diets, eat organic foods as often as you can, grass-fed, cageless chickens. All of that does really make a difference on the quality of the food. Consume clean water. Do your best to get some clean air around you, even if you have to get air filters. Go out and get some air filters and filter the air in your house. You'd be surprised what you might find in that air. Organic clothing and bedding. That's also important. All of this is important, otherwise we would not even consider talking to you about it. But it's important that we not have more chemicals that we're laying on when we go to bed at night. Because guess what? Our immune system goes down and we are more vulnerable as we sleep. Get some natural cleaning products into your homes. Do the things that we do in moderation, knowing that there are some things we do. Some of us like drinking wine. Wine is filled with arsenic, but we know that we can still deal with that. But wine is also filled with GMO yeast. So there are different considerations, but we like that glass of wine, or we like that shot of tequila, or we like whatever it is we like. Well, let's do it if we like it. Life is about joy. Let's do it. Let's experience it. Let's have a ball with it, and let's do it in moderation so our bodies won't become overcome. Let's have some integrity about the way that we step through life. I think this is one area where we're falling down these days. We're just falling down. Integrity is lost sometimes, and I see him getting ready to hold up. I'm done. And joy, 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 joy. Live your life with a smile on your face, and whatever you can do to bring that smile to your face, go for it. I'm Dr. Gloria Jackson. I represent the Foundation for the Healing Arts, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. There are my websites, and feel free to pick up some things over there on the side. I didn't take a booth today. I've got to sing this evening. And there's my cards there. So it's been a pleasure. Enjoy your day and all these fabulous presenters that you have, and take good care of you. Thank you.